All right, Tuesday morning Krug Show. Look who we have drummed up. Matt Maiocco himself. We got a lot to get to, as always. The Niners off a loss, now off to Arizona to take on the Kyler Murray, the
No.
Jacoby Brissett Arizona Cardinals. We're going to hit it right here. Off and rolling on a Tuesday. Welcome to the Krug Show, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. The best barbecue in all of Northern California is Pig and a Pickle. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. We're doing our meet and greet there during the bye week. So check us out December 7th. I'll be at Pig and a Pickle. Stop by, get some brisket chili, go say hi to Damon and Mary, and just maybe watch a little football, have a couple beers, maybe some root beer, sit around and we'll be in Corte Madera, not Emeryville. So check us out in Corte Madera, December 7th. We'll talk more about it between now and then. We'll do our meet and greet, MEAT and greet.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, Larry. Is that a MEET or MEAT? Should be an MEAT. Yeah,
it's an MEAT greet. But Pig and a Pickle, fantastic, and what they've done for the community is amazing. And Damon and Mary getting ready to possibly open a third location. We'll tell you more about that when it becomes official. But thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. We're also brought to you by Sleeper, as you can see over Maddie's head. Sleeper brings you football season throughout the year on the Krug Show. We'll throw a read towards them a little bit later. But let's just jump right into it, Matt. Kyle Shanahan has played Mac Jones, and Jones, man, this week, unbelievable. He completed 85% of his passes. This is 1 week after he completed 79% on the road against the Giants. But Shanahan said, hey, you know what? Purdy is getting closer, and he could have played this week, which kind of makes a lot of us feel like maybe he's going to play this week against the Arizona Cardinals. What do you think? I mean, obviously, we're doing this on a Tuesday, so we don't know about the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday practices and how everything's going to shake out. But what's your best guess as to who will be at quarterback opposite Brissett?
Yeah, a guess, but yeah, I think it's going to be Brock Purdy. If he was good enough to play last week, then I would think that would mean that they're going to force feed him and put him out there on the practice field on Wednesday and press the issue. I mean, the word that Shanahan used on Monday was, be more aggressive with him. And I think that's probably where they failed the first time when they tried to bring him back week 4. Is I don't think they put him through the stress during the week that gave them any kind of indication. Maybe didn't give him any indication of what it was going to be like when he got out there for a real game. So if he's out there on Wednesday going at it and working hard and doing the things that's required to play quarterback in the NFL, and he feels good on Thursday, maybe they dial it back a little bit on Thursday just to be safe, and then maybe a full practice on Friday and then the walkthrough on Saturday and be ready to go. But I would say at this point, if there's no setback, in other words, if he gets out there and things just aren't feeling right, then he wouldn't play, obviously. But I think there's no setbacks. My guess would be that he starts Sunday against the Cardinals.
It's going to be interesting. It's been a while. He, according to the reports, and I didn't see the workout, but before the Falcons game, supposedly Brock put himself through a pretty good on-field workout and may have had a little bit of a setback in that workout. Were you aware of that workout? Did you see that workout take place, Manny?
You're talking about at Levi Stadium before the game?
Yeah, before the Falcons game.
Yeah, so now I'm in studio 100% of the time,
right,
so right. I'm not going to the games. But what I'd heard that maybe is a little bit counter to what I'd heard going into the Giants game. Or hold it, let me think about that. Well, let's see, the Falcons game, then there was the Houston game, right? Okay, so that's going back a ways. What I can tell you is what I'd heard going into the Giants game, which was they felt really good about where he was at that point. And remember, at that point, Shanahan even said that there was some thought of making him the number 2,
right,
for that game against the Giants. So that would And what I was hearing at that point was they were thinking about making him the number 2, and then if all things were going the way they wanted to, he could possibly be back for the Rams game. Well, obviously that didn't happen, and Shanahan and probably an organizational decision decided to scrap the plan of doing, kind of the soft landing of having him just be, the number 2, suit up, but not start. It kind of defeats the purpose a little bit. I mean, if he's good enough to play, he's good enough to play. But from the standpoint of, Mac Jones was taking the practice reps, he was the one most prepared to play. So from that standpoint, you could say, okay, that makes a little bit of sense. Last week in practice, he and Adrian Martinez shared the scout team looks. So those two kind of went back and forth a little bit as far as who mimicked Matthew Stafford and the Rams first team offense in practice against the 49ers first team defense. But I mean, it sounds like he's doing okay. He's not, Shanahan has said it a couple of times now that he's not going to be 100%, but it's at the point where, is he good enough to play at a high level and play like himself? So, I mean, that's one of the things about this injury is, I mean, it's really a difficult injury. And I would think if there's another setback like he experienced against Jacksonville in week 4, I would think that the best thing to do at that point would be just shut him down for the rest of the season. But obviously the hope is, as well as Mac Jones played in 8 games, he played very well, that, the Friars hope they don't have to use him again, because Brock Purdy is healthy, stays healthy, and the Friars win a lot of games down the stretch.
Jones has been miraculous. I mean, he, it's funny. I was looking for the George Kittle post-game quote where he was like, "Hey, did you expect, I forget exactly how it was phrased. Like, did you expect Mac to be this good?" And he's like, no, I really, so do you think Kittle's reaction is kind of reflects, the 49ers brass? Do you think they are surprised by what Jones has done in a 49er uniform this year? I mean, or do you think maybe Kittle and some of the players are surprised, but the front office, this is what they envisioned?
Yeah, that's a tough. I think they thought that he was definitely going to give them an upgrade over most backup quarterbacks they've had through the years. But probably not to this level. Obviously the 49ers liked him in 2021 when he was coming out in the draft, but they decided to go with the higher ceiling of Trey Lance. So, I mean, in retrospect, it'd be kind of interesting to think, like, how would that have turned out if the 49ers had taken him? I think he's just a really good fit for the 49ers. And I think that, he's different than the backup quarterback they had 2 years ago. I think Sam Darnold, I think anybody could just look at Sam Darnold and go, man, he has a lot of talent.
Yeah.
And, the arm, the arm talent, the athleticism, everything. Like, I think Sam Darnold is a fit for just about any system. Where Sam Darnold, I think, didn't have any favors early in his career was he was always kind of in a mess of an organization.
Yeah.
And there was also kind of the idea about, like, how does he see the game? Is he on top of it as, mentally, as far as just the instincts and being able to, I mean, he's a smart guy and all that, but just does he see the game? You almost have to have like this next level savant-like quality to succeed as an NFL quarterback. And I mean, what's kind of interesting is Sam Darnold will repeatedly say that year with the 49ers, spending time with Brock Purdy, observing Brock Purdy, being around this system kind of helped how he viewed the game of football. And that helped him last year with the Vikings, and it's helping him this year with the Seattle Seahawks. So I don't know that Mac Jones is somebody that, I mean, this is probably a little bit of a different topic than what we're getting at here, but I don't know that there's 31 other teams who are out there going, man, Mac Jones we need him on our team and he could be our franchise quarterback. I just don't think that's the case at all. I mean, think about it. A year ago or whatever it was, 18 months ago, the Patriots traded him and all they could get was a 6th round draft pick. And then this offseason, there was no teams out there thinking about him as their starting quarterback. So I don't know that 8 games in the 49ers system is going to make any team out there think, oh, he could be our long-term quarterback. We need to go get him. We need to trade a 2nd round pick or a 1st round pick for Mac Jones. I just don't think that's the case, but he is absolutely, perfect is a word that's overused, but he's a really good fit for what Shanahan wants from his quarterback.
He looks great. I mean, it's a hand-to-glove fit. He, there were a lot of people that insisted that Shanahan wanted him, and who nobody really knew for sure. But watching him operate in this system, Jones looks really, really good.
Let's go back to one thing on that. Here's how I think it went down in 2021. I think the 49ers had an opportunity to trade up to number 3. They had a very good idea at that point that Trevor Lawrence was going to go 1, right, and Zach Wilson was going to go 2. The first quarterback that Shanahan looked at to evaluate whether this guy was worth the number 3 overall pick was Mac Jones, and he said, "Yes, let's make that trade because we know we can get Mac Jones." And then as they dug into it deeper, he fell. He always liked Mac Jones, but he saw more of an upside later on with Trey Lance. And so that's how I believe it all kind of went down. It was like Trey Lance was doing some things in the college level only for 1 season that Shanahan really liked, including play action where he's turning his back to the defense, which is not an easy thing to do. And then just the athleticism as well and the ability to play, quote unquote, 11-on-11 football. So I think that it wasn't anything that Mac Jones didn't do during that draft process. It was more like, wow, Trey Lance, there's a lot of upside there, and you can really hit a home run if he develops into the quarterback they thought he could be.
Yeah, I mean, there was a groundswell of support among the fans for Fields or Lance and somebody who's more dynamic because everybody was dreaming on the Patrick Mahomes. We need our version of Patrick Mahomes. And Mac Jones is not it. He's too limited, but he's accurate and he's on time. And if you had told me that Kyle Shanahan, who at the time had Jimmy Garoppolo, was looking for a guy who was just, hey, can you make good decisions from the pocket? Can you be accurate with the football? Can you process pre-snap? Can you do some of the things that I need you to do? I think he looked at Jones and said, you know what? He can do all these things. Yeah. Let's go with him. And then somehow either somebody talked him out of it or he talked himself out of it.
Yeah, I think he talked himself out of it. I think he's too headstrong to be talked out of that. Remember also the previous season, I think it was in December of 2020, the 49ers got absolutely roasted and toasted by Josh Allen.
Right.
And that was, a year removed, I guess, from, the Super Bowl and Patrick Mahomes. So I think there was a part of Shanahan that was like, man, my offense is awesome. But if you can also have a quarterback who can make up for the deficiencies or whenever a play call isn't the right call and things break down, if you can have a quarterback who can just make something happen with his legs, then that's a pretty good deal right there. So I think ultimately that's why Shanahan opted to go Trey Lance over Mac Jones.
Yeah, it's something I remember that Buffalo game. There was a throw by Josh Allen down the field over Fred Warner's head, just a laser that landed on, I think he was hit the receiver in the hands like the 10-yard line. And it was just such a high level throw from Allen. And I think that throw right there, I think a lot of people pointed to and said, damn, we need a guy like this. Okay. So that all being said, you mentioned that there probably isn't a burgeoning market for Jones. He's played.
Do you disagree? What do you think, Larry?
I think that every quarterback is such a necessity that when anybody sees that a guy can play, like I think there was not a big groundswell of people who wanted Sam Darnold when he came to the Niners, but when he left the Niners, it was a totally different deal. And I kind of feel like there's going to be some teams out there that look at Mac Jones and say, hey, you know what, this guy can process, this guy can play.
Yeah.
I think there'll be a couple bidders. But here's the thing. They signed him to a 2-year deal.
Right.
And Eric Branch asked the question in the postgame, and Jones was like, that's kind of an odd question, but it was really a great question because he didn't have to sign a 2-year deal. He could have signed a 1-year prove-it deal like a Darnold and just tested the market. Instead, he signed a 2-year deal. So the Niners actually have Mac Jones. There's a lot of people who are like, man, Mac Jones is going to make a lot of money next year. No, he's not. He's going to make $7 million next year. And he's going to either be the backup with the Niners or he's going to be the starter somewhere else, probably at $7 million. So I'll ask you this, man. I mean, what do you think the 49ers ultimately do with Mac Jones? Because he has established, I think, this year that at least to them, he probably has more value than a second-round pick, and that probably is the what he would fetch, in the trade market. So do you think they'll keep him, or do you think he'll ask to be traded? Do you think they would acquiesce if he made that request? How do you think this thing's going to go with Jones beyond the year?
My opinion is that Mac Jones is the backup quarterback for the 49ers in the 2026 season. I don't see why the 49ers would move him or put an emphasis on moving him. I don't think the draft compensation would be enough for them to say, oh, now we got to trade him. We've seen, how valuable a backup quarterback is. And also, a year from now, they would still probably get or I guess it'd be 2 years down the road, they'd get a compensatory pick, when he signs with some other team, but that wouldn't be until March of 2027. I have a difficult time believing that all these teams, or there's really any teams that would view him as the guy to step in, and that they would trade for it when he's been out there. I mean, I just don't think that a guy who's been in the league for as long as he has, this is his 5th year in the NFL. A year ago, teams weren't going to be, teams didn't give up much to get him. The Jaguars picked him up, like I said, for a 6th-round draft pick, and he had 1 year left on his deal. I mean, he's the same quarterback. He's just in a different system. Now, I guess the good thing for him and his market value would be that there are so many teams now that use some variation of the Shanahan system that, they could see it as a good fit. But I don't know. I think he'll be back. And I don't see why the 49ers would want to get rid of him, unless the asking price or the price that a team's willing to pay is so high that it's just kind of an offer they can't refuse.
They have a great quarterback room as far as vibes. I mean, you talk to any of those 4 guys, and they all kind of speak about how the culture's great in there, and it's because Brock Purdy's high ethics, and he's going to continue to try to win and help Mac win when he's not in there, and he's not petty, and he's very confident in himself, and Jones is confident in himself. You got 2 young prospects in Rourke and Martinez who are different but talented. They're all roughly the same age. I think the quarterback room, the culture in the quarterback room is really, really healthy for the 49ers. Let's talk about this upcoming game, because Seattle just beat Arizona by 22, doubling them up 44-22. But what I noticed in that game was that Darnold only threw 12 passes. It was 46 runs from Seattle and 12 passes. And Seattle ran for almost 200 yards. Charbonnet went for 5.9 a carry. Walker went for 4.8 a carry. And they really had a lot of success running the ball against Arizona. Do you think that maybe the Niners will look at that and say, hey, you know what? We got Purdy back. Let's instead of dropping back 25, 30 times, let's run the ball, complimentary football, keep our defense on the field, and maybe ease the burden on the return of Purdy? Could you see a game where maybe Purdy was, 15 to 17 passes, something like that, and not 30, 35, or 40?
I think that would be ideal for them. I don't think there's any question. I think the 49ers went into this last game knowing that they were going to have a really difficult time running the ball against the Rams. I don't think they go into the game feeling the same way here against the Cardinals. I think offensively, the 49ers did a really good job against the Rams, in the sense that even though the yards weren't there on the ground and the consistent success wasn't there on the ground, they really did use their passing game as kind of an offshoot of their running game with the ball control offense, the getting rid of the ball quickly. I thought they schemed that up pretty well, and Mac Jones was well protected, and they just did a good job. Other than you can point to 2 plays in this game that really hurt them against the Rams, and one was when they were moving. Well, actually, I guess maybe 3 plays. On the very first drive, Jennings had a catchable pass that Emmanuel Forbes broke up, and that's something with those vice grip hands of Juwan Jennings. Usually he holds on to that ball. That's a first down. That drive stays alive. And then the next drive was a Jennings fumble when the 49ers were moving. And then the last one was the 4th down stop at the Rams 11-yard line. So, other than those 3 plays, 49ers offense was really good. I mean, they averaged 6.6 yards per offensive play in that game, whereas the Rams averaged 6 yards per play offensively. So that really stood out to me when you look at the stats after that. For this game, I think the 49ers can be more balanced. They can run the ball. They need to run the ball. They need to take the pressure off of Purdy. They need to be able to use play action and protect him, and maybe take a deep shot here and there, but it all has to kind of be centered around the running game. So I think this is a game where the 49ers can be more balanced and maybe even tilt quite heavily toward running the ball and controlling the clock, keeping their own defense off the field, and just moving the chains and being methodical and protecting the quarterback who hasn't played in a long time.
Left guard's going to be Barch, Burford. We've seen Barch, Burford, Colby. We saw Barch and Burford in this last game. Burford started. Barch came in the second quarter. I think Burford got some run in the second half. Who are they going to share left guard, or do you think it's Barch's once he kind of shakes off the rest?
I think it's Barch's. Yeah, I think he's done a really good job.
Yeah,
when he's been out there, ever since he got his first start last season. The problem with him is that he hasn't been out there for very long stretches at a time, and that started last season. The injury he had, I believe, in Buffalo, that even carried over to the offseason where he missed a lot of time in training camp. And then, of course, it carried over into this season when he gets injured in week 2 in New Orleans. So I think if Barch can stay healthy, I think it's his job. And just kind of looking at the offensive line, I'd say by and large, the 49ers offensive line has given the 49ers what they want. The one guy, though, which is I would have been shocked if you told me this before the season, but probably the guy on the offensive line who hasn't played the best, or of the 5 guys who's played the worst, is him. Yeah, Dominic Puni. And I don't know how much of that is that injury, that knee injury he had in the preseason and just not being healthy, but he was a guy that I think when you looked at the line before the season, you thought, okay, well, Trent Williams is fine and Puni is fine. And let's see if those other 3 guys can kind of get it together. And I think, obviously McKivitz was trending in a very positive direction as far as his career goes. But yeah, Puni, I think that's really key. It's just getting him on track and getting him being a force in the running game. Because you look at, I think Brendel's given the 49ers what they expect. The guard play has been lacking. And a lot of it was, Colby was kind of overmatched as a rookie, and Puni just hasn't played anywhere near the level that he showed as a rookie.
Yeah, I mean, the interior play has just not been there. And then I know McKivitz struggled with Will Anderson and Brian Burns, but I mean, everybody's going to struggle with Will Anderson and Brian Burns. Those guys are beasts. The interesting one is Brendel to me, because he, in this game, he had a 34.0 PFF pass block grade, which was the lowest on the line. His guy made about 8 tackles in the run game as well. They went with Hennessy. I thought Hennessy looked decent. I mean, Dexter Lawrence only made 1 tackle, but I mean, obviously it's not quite as simple as that. How do you think they look? They really do love Brendel, who was with Furster in Miami. And I'm sure Furster said, hey, let's go with Jake Brendel when they were spending too much money on centers. And so he's a success story for as far as Kyle's concerned, because he's been a relatively inexpensive but pretty efficient center. And yet the numbers kind of say that he's struggling. And yet Furster, Shanahan, they're big fans. How do you think they view Brendel versus Hennessy versus Nugent or any other option? Do you think it seems like Brendel has got that job on lockdown? Why do you think that is the case?
I think because of like his knowledge of the system, his getting guys on the right page. Centers in the NFL. I mean, if you look at the PFF grades, I mean, isn't he like a top 10 center in the NFL? So it's not like that's a position where there are a lot of stars. And so probably if you looked at just about any center in the NFL and looked at what they did, you probably wouldn't be all that impressed, because so much is asked of the center from just a mental standpoint, not even the physical standpoint. And a lot of it is just, in the 49ers scheme, getting out there, making blocks at the second level, athleticism, being able to just kind of run interference to let a guy like Christian McCaffrey make his reads and get up the field. So, I mean, I agree with all you said, but when you kind of pull back and do the perspective, and I know we always get into trouble when we start talking about PFF grades, because I think PFF grades are kind of what you want to make out of them. Everybody has an opinion, and if you're down on somebody, there's not a PFF grade in the world that could change your opinion of a player. But when you look at it, in fact, I was just looking at that. I think Brendel is of centers who have played 200 snaps or more this season, Brendel's 10th. As far as the ranking system of centers in the NFL. So, I mean, if you're talking about a top 10 center in the league, and I'm pretty sure, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure that, Brendel has graded out considerably higher in his, what would it be, 8 starts than Hennessy did in his 2+ games.
I guess, but then again, it's 4th and 1. And are you running up the middle? No, you're running to the side. And Luke Farrell can't hold the block on Byron Young, and that 4th down gets stuffed. And people would say, well, why would you run outside? Generally, you would run in the middle, in short yardage. And it seems like they don't have as much confidence to do that. Let's flip the card and talk about the Niners defense, because I think that was the most interesting part of this game. And the most interesting part of the season is that their pass rush has dwindled because of the losses. They lost Bosa, they lost Huff. Now they have Huff back. Now they lost McKell. They're really depleted up front.
And Alfred Collins didn't play in this last game either.
Alfred Collins, who's really been coming on and giving them quite a few good snaps. So I guess the question would be, what is the impact of not having good enough rush, not getting help at the trade deadline? Robert Saleh in his heyday with the Niners, his first go round, was known as the defense coordinator that didn't blitz hardly ever, if at all. And in Sunday, he blitzed 54%. It was the highest blitz rate for the 49ers in 9 seasons. And we all know why, because he can't get there with 4. So he's got to bring the kitchen sink, as they say. What do you think is going to be the impact between now and the end of the year? Because towards the end of this game, you saw Niner young defensive backs getting burned, pointing the fingers. I felt like they were getting emotional with one another. If you watch some of the film, get really close up on it, you can see there's some discontent, there's some confusion. Simple motions are bothering them and throwing them, discombobulating the entire coverage. It's a young group, but what do you think not having consistent rush up front, what's that going to look like? What's that going to, what's coming if the Niners play the rest of this schedule, with very little rush up front?
Well, I mean, I don't know if they'll consistently be as bad as it was on Sunday, because they're not going to be facing Matthew Stafford and the Rams again in the regular season anyway. And then if you look at what's coming up on their schedule, I mean, is Arizona a team that can really take advantage of that? Is Carolina a team that can? How about Cleveland? And then after the bye week, Tennessee. So it's almost like they kind of have this reprieve where they can kind of just get together on the same page. But, when you don't have a pass rush, like the 49ers don't have a pass rush, it causes all kinds of issues in coverage too, because if you're sending extra people, now that kind of messes with the continuity in the back end and just tying pieces together. But, honestly, Larry, this is what I thought would be the 49ers issue before the season, even before the injury to Nick Bosa. I just didn't know who besides Bosa would be able to create and generate a consistent pass rush. And I think the 49ers did put a lot into the acquisition of Bryce Huff. But, when I looked at that, I was like, okay, well, that's a good pickup. And they didn't give up a whole lot for him. 5th round pick. And he had 2 years left on his contract. And also, I mean, it would go up to a 4th round pick if he gets 8 sacks. And that's something I'm sure the 49ers would love if he could get up to 8 sacks. But, Huff was a guy that had only really had one season as a consistent, steady pass rusher in 5 years in the NFL. So even before Bosa went out, I think that the pass rush was going to be an issue. And now you just look at it and you go, who? Huff has a little bit of pass rush juice. Sam Okawanu, a little bit, but he's never really done it before. Robert Beal hasn't done much at all. Keon White comes in and he, might be the 49ers second best pass rusher on the team right now. Cleveland Ferrell is still on the practice squad. I'm assuming he'll get his bump up to the 53-man pretty soon. But, to me, when I look at this 49ers team, above all the other positions where they have issues, the number one, the weakest position group, the most thin position group, and thin, they're playing 8-9 guys a game and rotating, but it's a defensive line. It just seemed to me like they were kind of getting pushed around in the run game. There were some gaping holes there against the Rams, and then they really can't generate much of a pass rush, certainly not much of a one-on-one pass rush. And then that takes its toll on the defensive backfield and in the situations that you described of, those guys have to be so buttoned up now because a guy like Matthew Stafford can just sit in the pocket and just pick teams, pick the 49ers defense apart because either the 49ers are using a 4-man rush and he has plenty of time to throw, or the 5 or 6-man rush doesn't get there in time, but he can make that hot read and get the ball out quickly to someone who's wide open.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be it's a little scary what could be coming because, CJ Stroud was not playing well when the Niners, when that game started, but, they didn't put any pressure on him. And sure enough, they, by the end of the game, I mean, he had beaten them. So, Jacoby Brissett didn't look great against Seattle, but he looked pretty good prior to Seattle. Mm-hmm. And if they don't put heat on him, he's an NFL quarterback. He could carve them up. The
saving grace is the schedule right now. These next 4 games.
Yeah.
They're all winnable. I don't think they don't have to go 4-0. That would have certainly helped them. But they can't go 2-2 in these next 4. They got to go at least 3-1, I would think, in order for them to kind of keep their playoff hopes alive.
Yeah, I mean, it's Cardinals in Arizona, then it's home against the Panthers, and yet the Panthers are playing well. Then it's it's at
they were they lost to the Saints,
right? And they didn't look good. They look really flat in that game against the Saints. But then then they got the Browns and that wide 9 and Schwartz and Myles Garrett. That's never easy.
Short week too.
Short week, and then you got the Titans who are kind of rugged. And then things, the last 3 games look kind of hard actually with the Colts. playing well, Seattle playing incredibly well, and the Bears, the Bears are a young team that's clearly ascending, and if you catch them on the right week, they can beat anybody.
Yeah, you put it that way. I mean, the 49ers could set themselves up where it really does come down to that game against the Bears, because those two could be in contention for that final, that seventh and final playoff spot in the NFC. But 49ers have some work to do to get to that spot, because, Larry, I don't know what this 49ers team is right now. It's just one game up, one game down. I don't know what they are, and I don't know if we'll see, like, who is this team? Is it the team that is it the team that played so well in week 5 and pulled off the upset against the Rams? Is it the team that looked pretty darn good against the Falcons, and played a solid, did what they had to do kind of game against the New York Giants? Or is it the team that we've seen in some other games here, like, the game against the Jaguars, the game against Houston, where, the game against Houston was their worst game of the season. So they just kind of have to figure it out and see what they are. But, I think the ceiling is pretty low for this team, just because of the deficiencies that we've been talking about on the defensive side of the ball, and specifically starting with the defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, Robert Saleh's just got so much work on his plate, right? We've seen games where the fronts and the coverages weren't necessarily tied together. We've seen, games like this last one where some of the DBs got a little frustrated late in the game with each other, and there was some miscommunication. There was one motion that totally, befuddled them and gave Kyron Williams a wide open rush lane. So there's some,
he's got 12 men on the field, right?
12 men on the field, and he's trying to coach it up. He's trying to bring some guys along. He's trying to develop a pass rush. He doesn't want to blitz, but then he's got to get pressure. So then he's blitzing 54% of the time, and there, everything that goes along with that. Who do you think, in my opinion, the best safety tandem is Malik Mustafa and Marquise Siegel? To me, that is the best combo, because Siegel's got the ability to cover as a former corner with 4.3 speed, and Mustafa should be the thumper, hitter, intimidator in the box. What's happened though is that Siegel started fast, and then had a couple games where he had 13 tackles, but then he started getting picked on a little bit, maybe lost a little confidence, maybe they lost a little confidence. They've gone to Jair. Lynch has maintained on Cambiar that, hey, Siegel will get his opportunity again. So they're kind of rotating through right now. They're using Jair Brown. He's coming off a game where he had 10 tackles. But to me, Mustafa doesn't quite look like Mustafa pre-injury yet. And Brown, I kind of think, is a strong safety who struggles with any kind of coverage. Pinnock is a veteran who they can lean on, but he's, I think, better closer to the line of scrimmage as a blitzer, impacting things. I don't know. I mean, who do you think is the best safety tandem? Not necessarily for this game, because it's a moment in time, but just like long term among these guys. Who do you think their best duo is back there at safety?
Well, I know that the 49ers believe they have one starting safety for sure, and that's Malik Mustafa. And then the other three are just kind of in the same mold a little bit, not stylistically, but just kind of where they are. But I would agree with you. I think that unless, and we don't know the answer to this, unless Marquise Siegel was just starting to show kind of a lack of confidence and needed a break, I think that the long-term answer and what the 49ers would be best in the long term if they rode with this starting tandem would be those two that you mentioned, Mustafa and Siegel. And some of it is just like, okay, well, Jair Brown might only be here for another season. Jason Pinnock won't be here next season. Siegel will be here for 3 more years. So, and Mustafa will be here for 2 more years after this year. So, if you could have gotten into a point where you feel confident enough in Marquise Siegel to pair him with Mustafa, hey, there's your starting safeties for 3 full seasons at least. So, to me, that's always the best part is, if you can have some continuity and you can have those safeties who are working together, communicating together, seeing the game the same way, being interchangeable a little bit, and hey, you didn't see this. I'll pick one up for you here, and just directing traffic back there, communicating with the corners, and the nickel back, and then linebackers community, all that stuff, all the communication that has to take place. I think that that would have been the best case scenario, but pretty clearly the 49ers felt like Marquise Siegel needed a break, or he just wasn't seeing it the way they wanted him to see it. I got to say, the first time that I saw him on the inactive list, I was a little bit surprised because, in training camp, I thought he was one of the highlights. And early in the season, I thought he did some good things. Even some of the plays he got beat on, where he gave up some plays down the field, I kind of felt like those were correctable with just experience, turning and looking for the ball, being right there, but not finishing, those kinds of things that the more experience you have, the better off you're going to be in the future. But I'm not sure exactly why they felt compelled to make that change where Jair Brown wasn't starting. And then, based on how he was practicing and his limited reps in the game, he's become the starter. So I think that's going to be, I don't think Mustafa and Jair Brown will be the week-to-week starter for the rest of the season. I think there's enough wiggle room there where you might see some changes here in the coming weeks.
Asante Samuel worked out for the Niners, and a lot of people were asking me this week, hey, do I think they will sign him? I think it's more due diligence than anything else, but he's had stingers in his shoulder, so there's some injury concerns there. And he's worked out for a number of teams, and he's left their facilities without signing, which kind of tells me that if he really looked amazing, if an amazing corner walks into your building in November, you don't let him out. It's like you sign that guy, even if he's got 5 other workouts scheduled. If he's really looking amazing, let's sign him now. But he's worked out for Chicago. He's working out later this week for Chicago and Pittsburgh. Niners looked at him. A couple other teams looked at him as well. What's your feeling here? I'm getting the sense that you feel like they're doing their due diligence, but nothing more. You don't anticipate him being a Niner.
I would agree with that. Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see what any team really wants from him. I mean, he had spinal fusion surgery in April, after he had the stingers, or what was thought to be stingers in both shoulders last year. And so, frankly, from the 49ers standpoint, I don't know that it's wise for them where this roster has been, and where the injury reports have been going, to bring in somebody that's coming off spinal fusion surgery when they've had such a difficult time with injuries this season. So yeah, probably something more, my guess would be that a lot of these teams are kind of looking at him for next year. And is there a team that's willing to put him on the 53-man right away? Is there a team, would he, I'm sure he wouldn't want to be on the practice squad, but maybe that's the path for him, to sign originally with a practice squad and then maybe get bumped up, elevated later in the year? Or is a team just like, hey, let's get him in. Let's see what he's all about. Let's watch him practice for the rest of the season, and then maybe, try to re-sign him for next year. So I don't know. I think it's just a really delicate situation when you're talking about the injury that he's coming back from. But, along that path, I'm not sure the corners have been in that big of an issue. I mean, what do you think? I mean, I think Diamador Lenore is really good. And I think that, I don't know. I'm not sure there's a debate there. I think he's a really good player.
No. I think he's a top 10 corner for sure. I think Green's a really good corner.
Okay. Yeah.
I think Green might be one of their best young players, to be honest.
Yeah. I'm with you there. And then the guy that kind of surprised me a little bit, he even made the team. I thought that they were going to keep Dallas Flowers instead in training camp, but Darrell Luter has stepped in, and when he's been called upon to play, he's been pretty good too. So they have 3 outside corners that look two guys I think that look really good and have promising futures. And then Luter, who's played very well when given that opportunity to step in. So those are the outside guys. And then I think Upton Stout has a lot of upside, and he's going to be a nickel back that's going to play, I think, a lot of football in this league. So I don't necessarily see a huge need at that spot to go out and get a cornerback who is coming off such a significant surgery and that there are obvious health concerns about him going forward.
It's funny. Dallas Flowers is a great example of, while I'll probably never get super excited about anybody in training camp ever again, because if you had told me in training camp, man, Dallas Flowers is going to have a real nice year with the Niners, I would have said, absolutely, man. He's big, he's rangy, he's a veteran. He's been injured before, but Gus Bradley knows him, brought him here. And not only they cut him, I don't, has he signed anywhere?
No. He's actually, I think he's playing, Larry.
Is he playing?
And I forget who he's playing with. I'll get that for you really quickly. Is it the Bears? It is the, let me see here. Bears you know what? Yeah, it is the Bears. I think what I saw was he had gotten activated. I believe he's on the practice squad of the Bears. And I thought he'd been elevated for a couple of games, but it looks like only one game this season. So,
but I mean, he's a talented guy. He's a big, rangy, talented corner. That's funny about the Luter thing, because, that whole, towards the end of August or whatever, when they're paring the thing down, I kept putting Luter on my final 53, and people were like, Krug, why are you putting Luter on there? He's, he's getting toasted. Yeah. He's getting roasted. Everybody's ripping him. But it was that we had, remember we had that day with the coaches in camp, before camp, and I just happened to be standing right by the door when Gus Bradley walked in. So I interviewed him probably for 3 minutes before anybody else walked up. And one of the first questions I asked him, I said, what do you think of Darrell Luter? He seems like he's the kind of corner that a guy like you would like. You had Brandon Browner, you had Richard Sherman, you had these big, rangy corners in Seattle. And he kind of grabbed my forearm and he's like, I really like Luter. I really like Luter. I see a lot of talent, a lot of potential in Luter, and we're going to try to develop him. And the way he said it was like, oh, this guy's not going anywhere. This guy's going to make the team.
I got to tell you a story, Larry. This was, it was one of those seasons with Harbaugh. I don't know if it was his first season. Still kind of feeling him out, and it was several weeks into training camp, and he and I were just talking. We were just chatting. I wasn't interviewing him. We were just talking, and I said, just kind of off the cuff, I said, hey, is there any like young guys out there that you really like that I should be paying attention to, and maybe I can write a little something, or whatever. I think I said that. Is this any young guys out there that might be kind of under the radar that I should be paying attention to? And Shanahan or Harbaugh kind of like stood back and kind of looked at me with a side eye and said, yeah, I'm not going to be sharing that information with you. and like, whoa, okay. And then, what he was basically saying was, I am not going to draw attention to any guy that we might end up having to release, but we want to keep around in the practice squad. So it was like, yeah, I could give you that information, but then I'd probably have to kill you because
right.
Yeah. So it was kind of funny, is like, because I've had coaches in the past, say, oh my gosh, this guy's really doing well. And, what a great kid. And boy, he's doing everything we want. But Shanahan was like, or Harbaugh just had no desire whatsoever to shed any light or bring any attention to any kind of under the radar guy.
I used to love those Harbaugh days because he would be like, somebody would ask him like a personal question. He's like, I don't want to peel the onion today, guys. I don't want to peel the onion. And Harbaugh, I mean, had some classics. If you're gonna go to the face, don't go with an open hand. Come with some knuckles. Remember, come with some knuckles. I mean, his whole thing was Schwartz when Schwartz was chasing him down the sideline because he gave him too hard of a handshake, and Bob Lang was trying to get in between. And
that was wild. That was an absolutely wild game.
Great moments covering the Niners. A couple last ones for you, Matty. What has happened with Nick Martin? And I asked Saleh this question. And he gave me a very thoughtful answer. People can go check it out.
Yeah.
It's out there. And it was like, okay, he's behind these other guys that are on special teams. It's almost like the Niners' desire to emphasize special teams, to eradicate their issues on special teams, have forced a guy like Martin behind a guy like Luke Gifford and Curtis Robinson. Or are they just not happy with Martin? I mean, Saleh said, well, he's got some work to do and that kind of thing, but we saw this kid's athleticism in the preseason. It's really otherworldly.
Yeah.
And we also saw Luke Gifford just get absolutely toasted in coverage. He couldn't stay within 5 yards of the receivers on a couple plays this weekend. What do you think we're going to see, Martin? Do you think there's some dissatisfaction with Martin? What are you hearing beyond what they're saying? Are you hearing any whispers about why Nick Martin is so kind of out of the loop here?
I think, generally speaking, coaches will almost always gravitate more to the player who knows what he's doing and can follow the assignment and just is buttoned up as far as the assignments go. They'll take that player over the physical, talented guy who might blow an assignment here and there, but can make plays in other. They just want a given. Now, I would say this, that the play of D. Winters and Tatum Bethune makes it such that there's really not an avenue for Nick Martin to get out there and play all the snaps on defense. I think what you're getting at is, if you're going to put your 11 best guys out there, though, in base situations, why isn't it Martin over Gifford? Right.
Right.
Well, yeah. And
it seems so much more athletic in a movement sport where the linebackers who used to run 4.9 and then ran 4.7, now they got to run 4.5. This guy runs 4.5.
Yeah. I would say that would be, I know all those positions are different. They're not interchangeable. There's different things asked of them. There's different, body types that they want for each of those spots. But to me, that would be, the interesting thing, or not interesting, but the thing about Nick Martin is I don't know that there's a path for him to be one of the team's top two linebackers. And it's those, 66% of the snaps are played in nickel defense. So you're only going to have two linebackers out there. I don't know that there's a path for Nick Martin to be one of those two every down linebackers for the next 3 years. I mean, how long is Fred Warner going to be around after this season? He's not taking his spot. You look at D. Winters, who is under contract for, I think, one more year after this year. Is he leapfrogging D. Winters? I don't know. Tatum Bethune is under contract for 2 more years after this season. The way he's played, is he taking his spot? I don't know. So I think
the question then has to be asked: why they invest a 3rd-round pick in him when they needed so many?
And that's a legitimate, fair question to ask. Was it because they didn't know that D. Winters would take that next step? Was it because they didn't really know what they had in Tatum Bethune? But no, that's a really legitimate question to ask. And when they made that draft pick of Nick Martin, where they took him, I read it immediately as, well, there's your starter. There's your starter alongside there's the guy who's replacing Dre Greenlaw, right? I mean, that was the only way to read that. And so it wasn't, I don't know if it was a luxury pick, where it's just like, we evaluated him as the best player, so let's take him. I mean, I would say that, one or half the season in, you can look back at that draft pick and say, that didn't make a whole lot of sense.
Well, it's interesting though, because it's like, somebody made the point to me the other day that you could have kind of said the same kind of thing about D. Winters in the early days of D. Winters, that it took him a while.
Sure.
I mean, I go back to that coaching, same thing. I go back to that seems like when we just get to sit with the coaches, you get insights that are great. And we'd only get it a couple times a year. But I remember talking to Johnny Holland this summer. I said, tell me about Nick Martin. He's like, he had a play this summer in one of the games where he was on the defensive right side and somebody got loose on the defensive left side. He crossed the entire field and got over there and made that play. He's like, we don't see that often. He's like, there's no doubt in my mind, Larry, that this guy is going to be a really good football player.
Yeah.
Now that's Johnny Holland, but now granted, he didn't say today. He didn't say he's going to be really good by week 4. He said he's going to be a really good football player kind of eventually.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I just remember that first game. Was it against the Broncos, their first preseason game? I think it was. He was awful, right?
Overran awful. Everything.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. And I remember talking to him after the game, and you just always – one of the great things about our job is you can look a guy in the eye and you get a sense for what they're about and the way they're saying things or what they're saying and the way they're saying it. And it was just me and him after that game. And I walked away from that going like, oh my gosh, he gets it. Like he was already watching film and just kind of shaking his head already. Yeah. And I walked away from that going, holy cow, this guy, he had a horrible game, but like he's made of the right stuff. So we'll see. There have been plenty of players who didn't do anything as rookies. I mean, I look back at, for what it's worth, Aaron Banks, who played 5 snaps, ended up being the starter for 3 years and getting paid a huge amount by the Green Bay Packers. So, they're one season or half a season certainly will not define his career, but just half the way into this season and looking at how they're set up at the linebacker position, it definitely is worthy of second guessing going, well, it's a good thing, I guess, that the 2 guys that he would be most apt to go in and replace are playing really good football by and large, Bethune and Winters. I just wonder if there will be an opportunity, though, as the season goes on, to incorporate him more into the base defense as, a guy who plays, 33% of the snaps at that strong side linebacker position. But maybe that's just not really putting him in the best position for him to succeed.
I believe in a lot of these rookies. I really do. I believe in Martin. I believe in CJ West, and I know West has not been great shakes yet. I believe in Jordan Watkins. He has not really done anything of note yet. So, I mean,
he might have to next year. He might be a starter next year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just look at the rookies as like, they're going to give you a good half year. It may be the first half, it may be the second half, and maybe you're not going to get anything from them in the rookie year, but hardly ever get the full year. I mean, Bryant Young did it in 94. William Floyd did it in 90. There's not a lot of Bryant Youngs and William Floyds who are the week 1 starter and they're starting in the playoffs and they're starting in the Super Bowl. It just doesn't happen that way often. It's usually they either have a great start and they get hurt, or they have a slow build up and then they come on in November, December. It's like most rookies typically give you half a year. Two last ones here. CMC has 2 games over 4 yards a carry. Robinson's got 5 games over 2 yards a carry. I get this question a lot. Has CMC lost a step? And I always say to the people, hey, guess what? If you keep asking me that question, eventually you're going to get the answer you want, right? Because eventually he's going to lose a step.
Yeah.
And if you keep asking the question, eventually you're going to be like, yeah, he's lost a step. It's not criminal to lose a step. It's not criminal to get old. And I can tell right here, but anyway, what do you think? I mean, is Christian, is he wearing out? Is he lost a step? Should they, I was looking at the split. It's basically 75-25 carries, CMC to B-Rob, which sounds about right, but I thought it would be a little bit more of Robinson because he was a starter in Washington. But we're starting to see him ramp up. Do you think we're going to see more of Robinson between here and the finish line?
I mean, this last game was 12 carries for McCaffrey and 8 for Robinson.
Yeah, which is a good split.
Yeah, a very good split, I thought. And still, I mean, McCaffrey's being more productive in the passing game than in the running game as far as the amount of yards. But I mean, he's still right up there. I mean, I'm not sure exactly where he is. I haven't checked the stats in a couple of weeks on that, but as far as yards from scrimmage, I mean, you can't look at those stats and say that he's lost a step. Where the 49ers just haven't been as consistent is their ability to run the ball consistently. You mentioned those 2 games of over 4 yards a carry, and everything else has been under that, sometimes way under that.
2.5 yards a carry this week.
Yeah. So I think he's fine. Again, of the issues that the 49ers have had on the team, Christian McCaffrey is a lot closer to being the team MVP than he is the reason that they have the 4 losses. In fact, he probably, just thinking off the top of my head, he's the MVP of the team, isn't he?
No doubt.
Yeah.
Unless you want to give it to Mac Jones and say Mac Jones is, but it's CMC. They've ridden CMC. He's absolutely been phenomenal.
And all that said, is there an opportunity for them to get more touches for Brian Robinson? Yes. But I think in order to do that, they have to run the ball better with CMC to give Brian Robinson those opportunities, because if the 49ers aren't able to sustain drives, then there's not going to be those opportunities for Brian Robinson to get in there. It was interesting how they used that first possession of the third quarter, though, where they put him out there and kept him out there. They kind of rode the hot hand a little bit until he had a negative carry. And then McCaffrey came back in, caught a pass, got it now down toward the goal line, and then Robinson came in and kind of used that battering ram running style of his to get it to the end zone. So I think over the final 7 games of the season, I think there will be more opportunities to incorporate Brian Robinson, and I'm sure a lot of it too was just getting him up to speed and what their protections are. What's asked of him as a runner, how to read, how to read those plays and what they want. So I don't know that a 12-8 split, McCaffrey to Robinson, will be the way they go about this in the future. But I think the door is open for him to make more of a contribution, because it really does look effective just because of their different styles of running. I think they complement each other pretty well. So, but the offense has to play good. It has to sustain drives. They have to get a lot of offensive plays in order to use Brian Robinson to the fullest.
Better future with the team, Jordan James or Isaac Orendo? Or bigger future with the team?
Well, I would think Jordan James, just because
if it was Corendo was going to do it, it would have happened by now.
I guess. But again, McCaffrey's remained healthy. Robinson's remained healthy. So, there really haven't been those opportunities to get a third running back out there. The only reason I would say James is because, after this year, he has 3 more years on his contract. And after this year, Corendo only has 2 more years. So, but you know what though? I think Corendo, he showed a lot of pop last year. He showed some home run hitting ability. I thought he made some really smart plays that you don't often see in games last year to go down before reaching the goal line to help run out the clock. So,
there's times where Corendo stands out on the practice field, on a field that has a lot of Hall of Famers, future Hall of Famers on the field. There's times this summer where you're like, look at that guy. just the size, the speed, his ability to move. And you're like, wow, if this guy could figure it out, man, there's some, I could see where teams would be intrigued by him because he's big and fast and he can really catch.
It's before the Brian Robinson trade was made. I in my own mind, I really didn't see the running back. I think, but at that time, I guess Jordan James was a little bit injured. But at that time, I thought, well, Grendo's a really good backup running back. He's fine as a backup running back. So, and they also had Patrick Taylor. I guess all those injuries kind
Corey Kiner, they had those guys too.
Yeah, they had all those injuries that kind of contributed to that. But there was a point where I thought, oh, they'll be fine at running back. We'll see if McCaffrey can make it through the season after last year. But I thought that if I thought Corendo would be fine as a backup running back, but they went out and they got somebody that they deemed better than him, and now you have to wonder kind of what his future is.
Yeah, and it was really interesting too because Garendo fumbled 3 times in one practice, and the next day Robinson was there.
Yeah.
And I always wonder about cause and effect on some of those things. One last question for you before we go. We should tell people 49er football season on the Krug Show, presented by Sleeper, the fastest growing fantasy platform in the world. One-stop shop. You get blazing fast news, real-time stats, group chat, season-long leagues, and of course, Sleeper picks for daily fantasy. Use promo code Larry. Sleeper will match your first deposit up to $100. Links in the description. Terms and conditions do apply. And thanks to Sleeper for being a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. We really love Sleeper, and they're doing a great job, and it's a lot of fun. So check it out. You guys will dig Sleeper for sure. I wanted to ask you about what is success. So, I think the 49ers, obviously they're trying to win every game. They're still trying to win the Super Bowl. And I'm sure there's people in that room that believe they still can. But then there's other people that believe that, they've, without Warner, without Bosa, that maybe that's not ultimate success this year, that's probably not possible, and that they're going to fall beneath their ultimate goal of winning the 6th Lombardi for the trophy case. I'll ask you this: if we gave Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch truth serum, and we said to them, "What's success this year going to look like?" What can we, outside of not reaching, if they don't reach the ultimate goal and win the Super Bowl at home, what is success? Is success making the playoffs? Is success making the playoffs and winning a game? Is success getting in the NFC Championship game? How do you think they view, what would they look back at this year and go, you know what, it was a successful year if they don't win it all?
I think, I think it's only logical that their definition has changed since week 1. I think, and I think I'd feel a lot better about this if Michael Williams hadn't been lost for the season. But to me, if they make the playoffs, that's a good season because of how they would have gotten there. With so many backups, with so many young players playing key roles, and then having that experience of just getting into the playoffs. And then I think anything they would do once they get into the playoffs is kind of gravy. If they win a game, great. Boy, it's really difficult to see them making a deep run, though. But I would think that because of the injuries that they've sustained, where they say it's a clean ACL tear for Bosa, which would lead you to believe that he should be ready to go either for the start of next season or early on. The Warner injury, as gruesome as it looked, that's typically an injury that isn't something that carries over a long time. They're talking about a 3-month basically rehabilitation period where he can get back out there. And then the Michael Williams injury too, a cleanish type of ACL tear. So, will he be back for the start of next season? I don't know, but should be back early on. Once you add those 3 guys, just on the defensive side, and then the young guys who in the roster right now as it currently stands that will have gotten the team into the playoffs, if that's the barometer we're using. And then you add another draft class on top of that. And yes, there is some fallback because some of the 49ers top players are older, and theoretically they won't be as good in future seasons as they were last year or they are this year. I just think when you look at the whole mosaic of how the 49ers are built, they would set themselves up a lot better for 2026 if they make the playoffs and they have that kind of experience and confidence in their tank to carry over into next year. So to me, if they make the playoffs, I think it sets themselves up well for next year, even if it means they're drafting a spot or 2 lower because they made the playoffs. To me, the experience and what the young guys will have shown by by contributing to a playoff team supersedes a spot 1 or 2 or 3 spots lower in the draft for 2026.
I'm almost with you. I think success would be win one playoff game. If they could win one playoff game, I mean, they may get Seattle. They may get a really good team. If they could win one playoff game, I think by all measuring sticks, that has to be considered a success.
Well, sure. But you don't. But think about this.
The schedule was so favorable that I don't know if I could put the playoffs there, but it's a really good division. So in that sense,
they're not going to win the West. We know that, right? So they're either going to play, if they make the playoffs, they're either going to play at Philadelphia, at Seattle or the Rams, at Tampa Bay, or at Detroit. I mean, those are really difficult places to play.
Yeah.
And so
Green Bay, right? They could go to Green Bay, right?
Could be Green Bay or Detroit. Yeah. Probably the most favorable matchup would be at Tampa Bay, probably. And that's probably the least likely of the spots that they would be heading. So I think getting into the playoffs would be measured as a success when you think about all the things that just haven't gone right for this team through the first 10 weeks of the season.
Yeah. And I always wonder what's Jed's, what's Jed's measuring stick? Is he with us? Does he think, either getting to the playoffs or winning a playoff game, or does he have loftier goals, or does he have, lower, goals? I don't know.
Larry, it's always a question, like when the season starts, like, well, what's it going to take for, this isn't applicable to the 49ers, but, how does this head coach, what kind of record does this coach have to keep his job, or what kind of record, or what does this team have to do to be considered a success, and, to avoid people getting fired and all that. And I'd say, 100% of the time, it's like, well, tell me how it got there.
Right.
Like if the 49ers finish 10-7, and you asked me this before the season, I'd say, well, that's a major disappointment to finish 10-7. This team should have finished a lot better than 10-7, or just. But then if you tell me, oh, well, there's no Bosa, there's no Warner, Purdy only plays 4 games, on and on and on and on. Ayuk never comes back, whatever the case may be.
McKell checks out in week 10 or
everything. Yeah. And then you go, okay, now they're 10-7 with all that stuff happening. Oh, yeah. Okay. That's not bad. So it is kind of like, you have to kind of see how it is they got to that point. But I would think, and, there was a point where I thought, even with the injuries, 49ers should still make the playoffs. And I think I still kind of feel that way, but certainly not as, decisive now that this is a playoff team. I think, they started off 3-0, and since then they've been, 1 game under 500, and I see them being kind of a 500 team through the rest of the season. But if they can do that and finish 10-7 and make the playoffs, I think that's a success.
We'll finish with a handful of super chats. Thank you to Habbas Law, 1-800-INJURED. They're a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. If you need someone in your corner, call the law firm insurance companies. Hope you never call, and that's Habbas Law. They will fight to make it right. Visit them on the web, habbaslaw.com, HABBAS law.com. You see it on the screen there, 1-800-INJURED. They will fight to make it right. Thanks to Omar and Tarek Habbas for being proud sponsors of the Krug Show, and we'll hit the supers. We got a few of them here, and we'll roll through them real quick. Joseph Ernberg says, where would Jeremiah Love go? Should we draft him? Well, he's a running back. He's going to go in the first round. And you have Christian McCaffrey and Brian Robinson, and Jordan James and Garendo. So I would guess that. And you have a huge need at tackle. The Niners, I'll say it right now, Maddie, the Niners will not be drafting a running back in the first round over an offensive tackle. I feel confident in saying that.
I think there are 3 positions that the 49ers need to hit. They have 7 picks in the first 4 rounds. I think offensive line, well, I don't know if I'd rank them in this. I think ranking them in order, I'd say edge rusher.
Yep.
And then, dealer's choice might be edge rusher again in the second round, but edge rusher for sure. offensive line and wide receiver, because I think wide receiver is going to be a spot where they're going to need to upgrade this offseason, because I think that honestly, when I look at the 49ers wide receivers right now, the only two guys where I can say, well, they'll definitely be on the team next season. There's only two of those guys where I say they will definitely be on the team next season. One is Ricky Pearsall. The other is Jordan Watkins.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's if, there's no trades. There could be trades along the way as well. We'll see how that all shakes out. Couple last ones here. It's Nick. Sorry about that. This is Mac to the Panthers for a first or a second and a third. Panthers need a quarterback bad. Mac can see the field. He can make plays. A good wide receiver core with bad quarterback play. I do think if I were the 49ers, I'd rather have Mac Jones than a second round pick. I don't know. I agree with Matt, though. I'm not sure that he would fetch a first round pick. And a second and a third seems like a high price, but if I were the 49ers, that's probably what I would want, a second and a third round pick for Mac Jones. I don't know if anybody's going to give you that, but that's what I would want.
It'd be interesting. Like, what do the Panthers think of Bryce Young? They got a better record right now than I would have thought. I thought they'd be one of the worst teams in the league. They're not that. They're coming off a horrible game, though. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's beauty in the eye of the beholder. It only takes one person to say, hey, I like that guy. And then all of a sudden, that team's trading for him. Goldhouse is Purdy to the Panthers for a second and a fifth. Okay. We got this one from Bill, who says, what if Brock plays poorly? How long of a leash? What do you think on that?
Well, I think his leash is long. However, if he plays poorly, the 49ers could always say, he's just not healthy. Let's shut him down. I mean, they're not benching him as far as, poor play. Mac Jones is now our starting quarterback for the foreseeable future. But, I mean, I don't know about you. I thought he looked obviously compromised in that game against the Panthers.
Yeah, everything was high.
Yeah,
and he's not moving well. He looks pained.
Yeah, I think if he plays poorly, when he gets back out there, I think that we could probably all look at it and go, he's just not healthy. And if they have to take him out of the lineup because he's not healthy at this point in the season, I think they probably would shut him down and just say, we'll see you again in 2026.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hope that doesn't happen, because the anti-Purdy crowd will then have the entire off season to question the guy. I'd like to see him come back and establish a little momentum. Three last ones here. This one from Celts Chronicles. He says, Larry and Matt, who's your favorite coach you've ever talked to?
Favorite coach. That is a good one. Favorite coach I've ever talked to.
I know who I have.
Well,
I'm going with Jim Tomsula.
Oh boy.
Jim Tomsula, me and Patrick Connor did a couple interviews with Jim Tomsula, and he's just he was such a character and such a, I'll tell you that, this kind of stuff. He put his hand on your shoulder. He's like, he's hitting, he's rubbing your deltoid as he's like, yeah, let me tell you about Alden Smith, man. Let me tell you about Ahmad Brooks, man. There was something down and dirty about Jim Tomsula. I love Jim Tomsula.
There are a couple guys that come to mind. One is the late Bruce DeHaven, who was a special teams coordinator with the Bills for a long time. And he always used to look at my grades on Monday morning. And I remember there are a lot of things about special teams play that I kind of learned from him. One was, why are you always talking about gross punting average? Nobody cares about gross punting average. It's net punting average. That's how you need to grade, punters and the coverage units. I was very close. Well, here's one guy, Greg Knapp, super guy.
Oh, that's my guy, man. We went to Sac State together.
Yeah.
Knapp, the Napster, was a big friend of my mentor, the late Bob Mattos. Had many conversations with Greg Knapp through the years. Very kind man, very qualified, good quarterback at Sac State, great coach, Niners, Raiders, several other teams, and just got hit while he's riding his bicycle. I mean, just unbelievable. What a great guy, though.
Yeah, he was great. And, I had a really good relationship, still do, with Dan Quinn of the Commanders. He was an entry-level coach with the 49ers early in my tenure of covering the team. And so we bonded, and he remains a good friend. And so it's really interesting when you're around and you see like the young coaches coming up, and you try to kind of go, okay, I wonder what this guy's going to end up doing. I'll tell you a quick story at the combine. Oh, this was probably 10 years ago. A coaching friend said, hey, we're going to meet at which one was it? Harry and Izzy's Steakhouse. We're just going to have some drinks and come on by. And so it was me, this coach that I knew, and two other people, and it was just the four of us, and we were there for like 3 hours, drinking beer and eating shrimp cocktail or whatever the heck we were eating. And it wasn't until and I followed his career a little bit up to that point. I didn't keep in touch with him or anything, but when the Eagles hired Nick Sirianni, I was like, Nick Sirianni? You mean that coach that I spent like 3 hours with at Harry and Izzy's? So
wow,
yeah, is that kind of funny?
That is ironic. I love Chris Kasarik of the current group. I mean, like if there's a coach's thing, I'll go right over to Kasarik because he's honest, he's passionate, he'll share, he'll tell you, he's intense. There's an intensity about Chris that I just love. I love watching him coach too. If I can go to any practice, I'm going to go. I mean, I'll look for the channel. I'll maybe film the quarterbacks, but if it's just me, I'm going to stand there by Chris and watch him just he's just awesome. I mean, there's something about D-line coaches that are just, fantastic. I can get any of his players to smile. All I have to do is say, what do you think of Chris and the way he coaches? No matter who you ask. I mean, big smile. Oh, man, I love the energy. I love the fire. Chris is down. If Chris could put on the helmet and pads, he would,
So, I got one. Here's my all-time favorite. It just kind of popped in my mind because I'm thinking back years. Jim Moore is a guy that I've known well for many years. But
Jim Moore Jr.?
Yeah, Jim Moore Jr.
Yeah.
The one guy, though, Bob McKittrick, I was so intimidated by him the first time, just going in and meeting him because I'd known of him for many years.
Legend. He's a legend.
A legendary offensive line coach. And then once you get to know him, or even, I mean, he was just so friendly, so hilarious, and so brutally honest. It was absolutely great. And so he's probably top of the list. I'll tell you this.
Belongs in the Hall of Fame, Maddie. I know you have a big hand in that. Someday, somewhere, that guy's got to find his way into Canton.
Yeah.
And I know you're have a big part in that whole process. And man, I don't know what can be done because, it seems like that's a whole nother chapter of NFL football where the assistant coaches don't typically make it. But if there was a Hall of Fame assistant coach, it was probably Bob McKittrick.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I think, I don't think, no assistant coach has ever been in because I think of the coaching, it's like, it's got to be a head coach. It's kind of like, the assistant coaches are kind of the best of the rest kind of thing. But yeah, McKittrick was a legend. And just a great guy to be around, and funny as heck. And just, like I said, would just tell you everything and trust you of what could be written and what could not.
Short sleeves and freezing temperatures and just Michael Jordan says Larry thinks Guarendo's a top tier receiver at this point based off what they threw him 16 passes last year. He caught 15 of them. That right there. And then just watching him catch it, he catches it like in his hands. He doesn't body catch it. He catches it like a receiver. He was a receiver,
right?
Yeah, he was a high school receiver, and he's very natural as a receiver. I think eventually that's his role. And we got this last one here. I put this last. We got this one from Harry Johnson. Thank you, Harry Johnson. He says, awesome watching two Niner media legends.
All
It's
right,
funny,
Harry.
Matt, you get to a certain age, you get some gray hair, you've been around a few times, all of a sudden you're a legend. All of a sudden you're a legend. But we
better be a legend than be 6 feet under, I guess.
There you go. Matty, awesome stuff, man. I try not to take too often of your time because I know you're incredibly busy, but total respect for your coverage of 49er football through the years. For people who don't know, Matt and I go way back to Matt was covering the Niners when I was hosting Sports Phone. What was your first year covering the Niners? I used to have you on Sports Phone 680 back in the day when you were working for maybe Santa Rosa Press Democrat days.
Maybe even earlier than that, Oakland Tribune or Contra Costa Times. Yeah. So I've been covering the 49ers full time year round since 1995, and then 92, 93, 94. I was doing other things. I was like a prep writer and covering community sports, but I was at the Oakland Tribune then, and I would be sent there once a week to write and also cover home games. So it wasn't full-time 49ers, but starting in 95, full-time year round.
Yeah, we really enjoyed those days. I mean, the early days, it was me and Townie in the studio. Yeah. It was John Schrader down in that little hut with you guys. And we would have great segments. So I think we did a regular segment with you back then. So it would be me, you, Schrade, Townie, and we just had some great Niner conversation back in the day. So
absolutely
awesome stuff, Matt. Right. Thanks to everybody. That's going to do it for us. Thanks to Habbas, thanks to Sleeper, thanks to Pig and a Pickle, and thanks to Matt. Have a great day, everybody. I'm going to be popping on 49ers with Brianna in a little bit. We'll talk a little bit more Niners Nightly tonight at 6. But for Matt, I'm Larry. Have a great one.
Yeah, never met a man I've been